Hello there. Good afternoon. I'm Sarah Sidem, the managing editor of Groups Today, the resource for all things group travel. This conversation today is an opportunity for us to go a little deeper and touch on topics that matter most to you, the group travel professional. Today, we're going to delve into the return of Broadway, what that looks like, the latest developments, what groups could expect, and more. Excitingly enough, there's a lot to cover. So, to help us learn more, I'm joined today by some industry veterans and some familiar faces to many: Bob Hofmann of Broadway Inbound, Nick Falzon of Disney on Broadway, and Stephanie Lee of Group Sales Box Office. Thank you all for taking the time to join us today out of your busy schedules.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks, Kayla.
Let's dive right into the first question. What's some good news in the world of Broadway that you can share with the group travel industry?
Some good news is that Broadway is reopening, and we are thrilled. And, it's every day there's more announcements about shows opening. Bob, I think we're up to 23 announcements.
Yeah, I think it's about 23 shows now that have given their firm dates as to when they're going to start performances again.
And it's fantastic. I mean, it's not like our industry to be to be quiet. So we have been very busy behind the scenes. So the culmination leading up to the recent announcement is so exciting. It's thrilling. And Bob and Nick chime in, but we've been hearing from you all, and that so many of you are so ready to come back to Broadway, and we're ready to welcome you. So it's a really exciting time.
Yeah, it's been so long that we've said we really don't know what's going to happen, and the theater community has been following the state guidelines and the CDC guidelines on how we can do what we're going to do. And now it's just great. I mean, it just started. Shows started going on sale last week, and the first performances are going to start on September 14th, and then you're going to see a staggered opening that as shows start coming through the rest of the season. So September 14th is the first one that has announced, or several, and Nick has a couple of those in his back pocket. And then you'll see a couple in October and a few more in November and a couple in December. It's really very exciting. We're just really glad to see it rolling out the way that it is.
Absolutely.
I think one of the things that's exciting, though, is that I remember, early on in this whole process, people would come and ask us questions and say, okay, which shows do you think will reopen and which ones do you think won't? And the reality is that at the end of the day, most shows are reopening, the vast majority of them. So in that time period from September through the end of the year, like the Broadway that was on in March of 2020 is back, and those shows will almost all of them are going to be reopening. And once we hit the early part of 22, it will be like the street as it was before, which is encouraging.
Yeah, and even a few new ones in there. So some of the shows reopening and some new shows
that.
coming in. So there's a lot of great activity going on.
That's so wonderful to hear. And speaking of that, what's expected to be different about the Broadway experience once guests are welcome back?
Well, there's a lot that's being done from an overall industry perspective to be prepared to welcome guests back, and also specifically to be able to service the group industry and to be prepared for students coming back. So we've prepared in a lot of ways for that. First off, right off the bat, and this is across the board, there are generous refund and exchange policies that weren't in place previously. Like each show may have had like their little patchwork quilt of different policies that were fairly inconsistent. But now basically there is the ability to refund universally across all shows on Broadway, which is a real advance in terms of how we're servicing guests and thinking about making sure that we're taking care of our clients. The thing about the protocols, right? A lot of people are asking, like, okay, are we going to be wearing masks? Is it going to be at a reduced capacity? Are we going to have staggered arrival times? Like a whole host of different things. And I'll be honest that we're holding off on being very specific about what those plans are, which is not to say that we're not working on them, but not getting too specific, because literally in the last 3 weeks, I've seen the proposed protocols change 3 times over the last 3 weeks, just because the situation is so fluid right now. So My expectation with our shows restarting in September is that we're going to be making some firm decisions come the middle of August, and it's not really even so much our decisions. We're taking guidance from the state, from the CDC, about what needs to be done, and then we'll start actively communicating. Knock on wood, even over communicating, so that all of that information does get out there. I would say, just in terms of all of our different partners, I would just be prepared in that moment, in those weeks leading up to performance, because there are going to be a couple of steps that are different from the existing process, whether that has to do with contact tracing or whether that has to do with needing an app in order to get in the theater, having to do with vaccinations, or are you going to be required to masks or not wear masks? That stuff will evolve, but we're here to partner to make sure that everyone's prepared.
Yeah, just to piggyback on what Nick said, it's like it is changing every day. And if we were welcoming people into the theater today, it would be a much different experience than what they're going to experience when they come in September. So it's really just one of the things for everybody to be aware of, is that we are going to communicate, maybe not over communicate, but hopefully better we'll communicate more than what we have to, in order to make sure that everybody gets what they need. But be aware of that as a tour operator, as a group leader, that we are going to be sending information out to you. And sometimes the theaters themselves will directly be sending information out to the group leaders that are traveling with your groups, in order to make sure that they know what to expect when they're coming into the theater. So things are changing changing rapidly, and we want to make sure that we're keeping everybody up to date on it.
And all that said, it means that every patron can come back to the theater and feel comfortable that their safety has been the priority, the number one priority throughout this whole process, and will continue to be, is everyone's safety. And that's patrons, that's the cast, the orchestra, front of house, back of house, everyone walking in and out of that theater can be assured that their safety is the number one priority for all theater chains and for all partners.
Absolutely. Share some insight as to why the return of Broadway is, perhaps different than other attractions opening back up. What needs to be considered and happen behind the scenes first? I think there's a lot there.
Wow. Yeah, there's absolutely a lot there. I mean, I guess the biggest difference when you start thinking about it in relationship to an attraction or a tour and other experiences, that there's 41 Broadway theaters, plus all the off-Broadway theaters, plus all of the, sort of the restaurants and the bars and everything that sort of filter all of the audiences into the theater. So it's in a very compact location for the most part. So it involves way more people in multiple facilities than it does when you're talking about a typical attraction or experience that you're going to go to. And then when you think about it, and Stephanie sort of alluded to this, it's like we need to make sure that everyone is safe, and that we're looking at taking care of the backstage and the front of house and the audience. So there's been a lot. This has been going on since the day that we closed, back last March. When we closed, there's been committees that have been looking into what does it take in order to bring this back, and to bring this back safely. And actually, and going back to what Nick said, to bring it back once and not have to close down and then do it again. We want to make sure that we do it right the first time. So I think there's 15, 17 unions that we work with, negotiations with the unions, negotiations on how we're treating things backstage. Think about how we all think of it, or you all think of it, from the front of the house when you're out there in the audience, and we know what that experience is like. Not many of our audience have been backstage to see what it's like and how close quarters people are in and what it's like to be on stage. So all the regulations have to be done for that. And then front of house and our usher staff and all of them and how they're handling it. But then you also get into when people arrive at the theater and how they arrive at the theater. Touchless ticketing. There's going to be the option for digital ticketing and to be sent to our patrons. We are really trying to eliminate as much box office will call as we possibly can. There's going to be some shows that are going to be on staggered times of when they start, going back to that whole idea of 41 theaters in a pretty compact area. So rather than everything starting at 8 o'clock, you may see some shows starting at 7 and some shows starting at 7:30 and some shows starting at 8 o'clock. And those are all kinds of things that we need to communicate. So it's a whole ecosystem that is much larger than one attraction. And I'm really grateful for our industry that they have been taking it very seriously and looking at all the things that are involved in order to make sure that we can come back successfully and safely.
The other thing to keep in mind is these productions are they're almost athletic events in terms of how prepared specifically the actors need to be able to pull off those performances 8 times a week, 2.5 hours each time, right? So the amount of rehearsal that they're going to need to do is significant. Having been out of it for a year, there's going to be weeks of rehearsal where they're basically almost going to have to relearn the show from scratch and just get that back into their muscles, because there's a whole lot of muscle memory and being able to sing some of those songs on an 8 times a week basis. So just also getting prepared to be able to hit the stage as if it's opening night all over again on September 14th.
Sure. And, specifically those in the arts and travel industries are really known for their creativity. What are some creative ways that you've seen folks adapt over the last year, or how have you seen the industry itself adapt and change, and maybe access to the industry change?
I'll take that one. I mean, I know as the mom of 2 kids, I've had, my daughter has just absorbed all of the content that's been available. There has been, during this downtime, so much creativity from our industry, and on such an intimate level. From, we've been in actors' homes, we've been in their living rooms, we've seen them in their lows and their highs, not acting, right? A very personal experience, and an abundance of content that has been accessible to anybody who's interested. So I think it's been really unique in the way that Broadway has used this time to get even more creative. I also think it's allowed Broadway to grow its audience in a very broad way, because there's just so much content. So people are logging in from all over the world, and so much accessible content, meaning it was free. So my hope is that we've developed more theater fans through this process.
Yeah, being able to see sort of the inside. I mean, when you think about seeing in someone's apartment, or people performing, live, but also people have been rehearsing live. I mean, a lot of these shows have been getting together and staying engaged, and it's a company, and that company feeling that they've been able to maintain through program like platforms like this, in order to be able to entertain but also to stay engaged. But also when you look at it, and I don't know if this would have happened, although Hamilton came out on Disney Plus, which was terrific, was the first show that streamed. I think that was planned in advance. I know it was planned in advance for when they were going to come out, but it was moved up. But then you look at shows like Diana, which is going to come out. It's going to be seen on Netflix before it's seen on stage. And Come From Away was just filmed the other day. More shows are looking at how they can engage audiences through streaming platforms and broadcast in ways that won't take away from what the live experience is, but will give audience members a different relationship to what the show is and what the show has to offer. So I think that there's been a tremendous amount of things that the shows have been doing to stay engaged, to stay athletically up in shape, as Nick had said, but then also to figure out how to share electronically in a way that they never would probably have done prior to the pandemic.
I think we're also going to see some advances in sort of the ancillary events that are attached to the show, right? So as it pertains to things like workshops or the ways, maybe not like a post-show Q&A, but different sorts of ways of reaching performers or reaching the content in advance, right? So I'm thinking about people's sort of journey as they're contemplating coming to New York and seeing a show, right? That it expands the view so that people might actually begin to learn more about the show in advance, because they're familiar with and more comfortable with interacting in this platform in a way that a year and a half ago we weren't, right? So I think there's a way to really captivate audiences and get them excited, and then make that trip to New York the final payoff that makes it really exciting.
I completely agree with you, Nick. I think that even the virtual workshops that we've done with the dance classes and moving into the classrooms, it was something that I've always thought would be very valuable to us. But I think it took something like this in order to show people that it's not only that it can be valuable, but that it's possible and it's practical and it's really engaging, and it's just it's opened up a whole myriad of opportunities, particularly for students, but I think for all different types of travelers coming in.
Yeah. It's really wonderful to see more people be brought into that fold and to eventually, want to see those things in person and enjoy that.
Absolutely.
And let's say for groups that have been to Broadway before, what should they keep in mind when they return for the first time post-pandemic?
Bring tissues.
We all said earlier we'll all be weeping when we go into the theater, and I hope it's on the 14th of September for me. I'm expecting it will be.
Yeah, but in all seriousness, I think it's going to be just a rebirth of an industry, that we all love so much. So I can't imagine that first performance and what that feeling is, because pre-pandemic theater was such a unique and special experience to be shared with 1,000 other people sitting in the theater. So I can't even imagine what that feeling is going to be like for not just for us, the audience, but for everyone, the cast. I think it's, not to be missed. So get your tickets soon.
And let me say something. Go ahead, Nick, and then I'll come in.
No, go ahead.
I think that you should expect an outburst of creative energy like we have probably not seen in decades. I've said this many times over the course of this pandemic, and it made me feel a little guilty at times too. But during the Black Plague, Shakespeare wrote King Lear. I mean, when you think about what happens during these times and what artists do, artists focus, and they focus then internally, but then also how they can express what has been happening to them in the world. And I think that you are going to see an outburst of creativity that is going to be a shared experience, which is what the theater is at its heart, is at its soul. It's a shared experience from stage and audience. And I think you're going to see a whole lot more energy coming out of that. That'll be sort of just a remarkable time for us creatively. And you're also going to see a whole lot more BIPOC community engaged in a way in the creation of theater and in the running of the theater and on our stages. And I mean, I feel like that's something that's happening around the world right now, and absolutely in the United States. But between the Black Theater United and the Black Theater Coalition and the Industry Standard Group, the BIPOC community, the Asian American Pacific communities, Broadway's Women's Alliance, all of these groups have been really highly motivated during this time to find ways that they are going to engage and change what we're seeing. So there is going to be a different look, a different feel, and a different energy coming out that I think is only going to amplify what the experience of theater has always been as we return.
I'm also really excited for the city itself in terms of coming back, that vibrancy, that electricity. I've actually found myself heading into the city quite a bit over the last couple of weeks. And, I remember the first time coming in, I was like, okay, I live in New Jersey, just over the river from New York. And so there was a period of time where I wasn't going in. First time back, it was like, okay, well, it just feels a little weird, a little different. And the reality is that the city's coming back, and it's coming back in a very electric, vibrant way. It feels safe. It feels like the New York that we love, and I'm excited for it to continue doing that over the next couple of months.
The gorgeous weather doesn't hurt either.
Well, it does help.
If you were in Times Square over the weekend, it was bustling this past weekend. There were families out. Everyone was walking through Times Square. I was there. The street vendors were out. It was exciting. It was exciting to be amongst people.
I really love seeing all of the restaurants on the streets too. I don't know how you guys are feeling about this, but this sort of,
Yes.
I know they're planning on it staying, but I love dining out, and it's a big part of the experience of being in New York, and actually being able to be on the street is kind of nice. It feels really good. So there's a lot of good feeling out there.
Yeah, that's a new, wonderfully unique aspect that has been added to New York City. That's, hopefully would stick around for a little while longer.
I
Uh,
expect it will.
yeah. Um, when it comes to planning future shows, attending future shows, like many people are, how far in advance do you recommend groups book their tickets to ensure that they're going to be able to see what they want to see?
I I don't think the I don't think the rules have changed, right? I think that we used to advise our partners to book their tickets 6, 9, 12 months in advance to make sure that they get availability. And I don't think that has changed. But I'll actually go a step further by booking further in advance. There are unique opportunities that haven't existed like this in a long time between more availability than there has been for a while, more flexible pricing than we have had for a while, more flexible exchange and refund policies than we've had for a long time. So, yes, 6 to 9 months, you're probably going to be able to get what you're looking for. But anyone who's at this point now trying to look ahead to next spring or next summer, there's a number of shows that have gone on sale. We've gone on sale through until August of next year. So availability is amazing. Pricing is great. We actually just rolled out a new Name Your Price program where basically it's no longer the prices that we set; it's the prices that each of our group clients' budget can make happen. And so we think there's a real opportunity for folks who are able to jump on things now.
I'm going to add one thing because you're exactly right, and I think 6 to 9 months is terrific. But can I also encourage people? Let's try to book in the fall too. And we can book with confidence. And one of those things that I'm hopeful for, knowing that everyone's going to be looking at the spring, and I think the spring is going to be a crazy time, but and be busy. And I do think that the earlier you book that's going to be the better. But think about the fall and what it's going to be like coming back in September, October, November, and December in New York City, because I think it's going to be a very exciting time to be here. And I hope that we can encourage people with the policies that are in place and the booking with confidence and everything and the pricing that is out there to plan your trips now, because I think that there's an awful lot that you're going to gain from being here during this time.
Absolutely. Now, is there anything?
Agreed. Sorry about
with
that.
our Hamilton Cup there, what do you
Hamilton
say?
Cup, I know.
And you're speaking of all this excitement. Is there anything additional that we haven't touched on or exciting news that you'd like to share with those who are tuning in? Are you just excited for the return?
Yeah, I have to say I'm really just excited for the return. That is really the best way of putting it. I'm really grateful for the way that this is rolling out. I think not everything, but most of the shows started going on sale this last week, and the fact that it is kind of staggered gives us a little bit of room. It's a little crazy. It all happened very quickly based on the announcements that happened. But to me, it's just the fact that there's a bright light and a fresh energy that's coming out. It feels really good, and I just can't wait till September. That's really where I'm at.
I'm also, maybe it's just for my own personal sake, but I've been really encouraged with the way that companies who, admittedly, we're all friends, but companies who are traditionally competitors, the way that we've all been able to come together and work with each other for a common united bond, right? The fact that the three of us are sitting here, this is not the first event that we've done together in partnership, but the fact that we're all acknowledging the fact that we're one Broadway community. Or when Lion King announced its return on September 14th, right? We did that in coordination with Hamilton and with Wicked, basically saying, okay, the biggest shows on Broadway are back, right? And I'm just grateful for the opportunity that kind of partnership and collaboration is happening, and I'm hopeful that continues and pervades through the community for a long time to come.
Yeah,
Agreed.
has been
Grace, it's a great sentiment, and it's not only, I have realized and recognized that in so many industries, and I think it's such it's a testament certainly to Bob and Nick, for the three of us to collaborate so closely together. And it's important to us that we're unified because it's been tough. and we're ready. We're ready to do it better. We're ready, I think, to be smarter about our businesses and to welcome everybody back.
Can I say one more thing if we have time, Sarah? It's just I agree. This unity thing is really good, and I'm actually really proud to be a part of the travel industry as well at this time because I mean I've always appreciated the way that my two worlds of Broadway and theater and travel come together. But I think that the way the travel community has embraced that collective nature of the travel industry and working together over this time has been amazing. So we've been doing that and thinking about for Broadway, but I also know how valuable travel and the travel community is going to be as a partner for us in coming back. And that's because of all the conversations and your webinars and all of the other webinars that I've sat through over these past 14 months that I've really enjoyed and learned a lot. But it's basically all of us helping each other. And I think that's what's going to make all of this successful as we come back. So I want to thank you all for what you've been doing and appreciate all of what you are going to be as partners in helping us to bring Broadway back, and to New York City for that matter, back to what it was before we all closed down.
Yeah. Collaboration and resiliency go hand in hand more often than not. So
Absolutely.
thank you all for joining us today and sharing your insight in this very, very exciting news as we get to the return of Broadway. Thanks for joining us. Have a great rest of your afternoon.
We'll see you in the
Thank
fall.
you.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye,
Thank
guys.
you.